This is an introductory movie to show the basic anatomical subdivisions of the larval zebrafish brain. To help orientate you, the movie will show bright field images followed by three-dimensional reconstructions of confocal data. This is a bright field image of the zebrafish head at 4 days old. The image is taken from a dorsal aspect. You can see the outline of the brain highlighted, and you can even see some of the subdivisions of the brain. Here is an undissected, three-dimensional view of a zebrafish head showing immunohistochemistry using our most frequently used antibodies. Anti-acetylated tubulin in green, which marks axon tracts primarily, and SV2 in magenta, which marks the neuropil. This dataset was taken from a dorsally mounted specimen and does not show the full depth of the head. For example, only the dorsal half of the eye can be seen. Here the brain has been isolated by removing the other tissues of the head. Here is the head from the lateral aspect. Again, the outline of the brain can be seen. Here is a three-dimensional view which should give you a good representation of where the brain is within the fish. The green tubulin staining, for example, shows some of the cranial nerves exiting the hindbrain and innervating the head. The tissues of the head can be removed to view the brain in isolation. Here we are showing only the tubulin staining. This shows the tracts of the brain mainly, but also some of the neuropil, shown initially from the side, a lateral view, and then from below, a ventral view. Defining the limits of the forebrain can be difficult. However, using the tubulin stain shown here, you can clearly see the division between the forebrain and midbrain from this dorsal aspect. From the lateral view, you can see the forebrain extending caudoventrally beneath the midbrain. The division between the forebrain and midbrain is particularly ill-defined in the area around the optic tract. Ventrally, the forebrain takes up a large part of the view. The ventrocaudal part of the forebrain underlies the midbrain and extends back as far as the rostralmost part of the hindbrain. The optic nerves are an obvious landmark, as is the anterior commissure. Here is a dorsal view of the midbrain. The rostral and caudal boundaries are clearly delineated using tubulin staining. The dorsal view is made up mainly of the paired tectal hemispheres, linked by multiple commissures. In this lateral view of the midbrain, you can see the optic tract providing input into the tectum, as well as tracts connecting the tectum to the rest of the brain. The caudal boundary of the ventral midbrain is well defined. When viewed ventrally, the midbrain sits either side of the forebrain. From this view, very little of the midbrain is actually visible, but as the view rotates from side to side, the relationship between the forebrain and the midbrain becomes clearer. The most caudal division of the zebrafish brain is the hindbrain, or rhombencephalon. From the dorsal aspect, the midbrain-hindbrain boundary clearly delineates the rostral limit of the hindbrain. The two structures that form this boundary are the optic tectum in the midbrain and the cerebellum in the hindbrain. When viewed laterally, the roots of several cranial nerves can be seen entering the hindbrain. The nuclei of these nerves are arranged in clusters at various levels throughout the hindbrain. And from the ventral view, some of these roots are also visible, although all of the roots are not visible in this particular specimen. An obvious feature in this ventral view is that the ventral hindbrain is composed mainly of longitudinal tracts that course rostrocaudally and caudorostrally to and from the spinal cord.